So good afternoon, everyone. I am here to answer any questions. I know that many people received the letter that we had sent out to many of our community-based organizations, as well as to the City Council President. As we start to really look at what the Race Commission reported, I don't know if anybody has received this or if everyone has received this and looked at it. It truly was an eye-opener. Many of the things that they outline here we already knew, but seeing it in paper and seeing the recommendations and really looking at where we need to go from here and the historic inequities, I think that we're in a unique moment in time. When you think about 48% of Rochester's children living in poverty, that's 22,000 kids whose families struggle to make ends meet. The Race Commission report and, of course, my State of the City address and the congressional district being one of the worst for Black and brown people. The legalization of marijuana gives us a unique opportunity to right some wrongs, and that's really the definition of reparations, the making of amends for a wrong that has been done by utilizing resources to otherwise help those that have been affected by the situations that, by government in many cases. The Race Commission talks about redlining. They talk about the systematic effects that government has put in place and how it has been applied to keep Black and brown people down. And given the fact that the state legislature is on the cusp of really legalizing marijuana in the state of New York, I think that it's time that we look at how we're going to utilize this money, but also where we invest these dollars. And so I'll answer any questions that you may have on that. So we're looking at, as you know, you probably already know, in Stockton, California, they already have passed universal basic income. Oakland, California has also passed it. It is in the pilot phases where you would actually figure out what is a universal basic income across the board in your community, and you would provide that supplement so that people can make ends meet. This is something that's being pushed for across the country. And when you look at Evanston, Illinois, that particular program utilizes their marijuana dollars, a portion of it, to really enforce and push home ownership, especially for Black and brown people in their community. And so what we're looking at is if we were to do something like this in Rochester, we're putting together a committee, what would it look like? And how would we go about getting those resources, and who would we give those resources to? What income would they qualify? What neighborhoods would qualify? And for me, the neighborhoods that were most affected are the neighborhoods where we see most of the violence. It is that crescent. And we need to make sure that we're making that investment in those neighborhoods.
Mayor, do you see any sort of, I guess, residency requirement?
What do you mean by residency requirement?
Say somebody finds out that this is going to happen,
Mm-hmm.
they move to Rochester to take advantage of it. Would there be any sort of residency requirement?
So I know that that's something that people have looked at, and since Evanston has just passed their law, they did a lot of research. Actually, 2 years ago when I was in Washington, D.C., I met the councilwoman from Evanston and talked to her extensively about that program with the National League of Cities and the racial equity and leadership. And so what we're doing is looking at those very issues by starting the exploratory committee. And so all of those questions would be answered through that particular process. The one thing that we cannot deny, right? None of us can deny, and the Race Commission makes no bones about it, is that government and our policies and our procedures has disproportionately affected Black and brown people in our community. We have an opportunity to make it right. And how we invest these dollars, to me, matters. The people, the neighborhoods, the communities that were most affected by the criminalization of marijuana deserve the opportunity to be the first ones to receive and also to be invested in as we start to distribute those dollars.
Do you see UBI and reparations as interchangeable?
You know, it can be. I don't necessarily know, and that's why I want to explore it. And so there may be other ideas out here that we haven't considered, but these are some ideas that have already been implemented across the country, and that's why we're starting to look at this. UBI has, they just released a report a couple weeks ago that the data is promising. Reparations was just passed in Evanston, Illinois, so we don't know, but my hope is that here in Rochester, as we start to look at these dollars coming to our community, that we first make right the wrong that had been done in the neighborhoods that were disinvested in because of drug sales.
Now, is this going to be exclusively for black and brown people, even though we have many different races in our community? Is this going to be reparations that's exclusively for black and brown people?
My hope in doing the exploratory committee is to really look at that issue, but why not? When we think about the fact that we provide as government subsidies for rich people all the time, why can't we provide a subsidy to make poor people less poor? And so when we look at across the board, a lot of the governmental programs, tax incentives for developers, you know, tax breaks for the rich and all of that people have been talking about, it's time that we really truly change people's lives generationally. And a way to do that, as we all know, is through home ownership, through investment, passing on wealth from one generation to the next generation. The way that happens is through real estate, and that's why redlining affected communities of color so, you know, disadvantaged us to the extent that we were not able to make that investment, not able to buy those homes, not able to get those loans. And that is not a myth. That is actually fact. And it's time that we stop playing around. As it says, no time for excuses, it's time for action. And this wasn't a report that I know that I did and invested in just to sit on a shelf. We want to change the lives of the most affected people in our community. It's on page 69. There is a dissenting or an opinion that is in here that was supported by Danielle Ponder and Damon Wilson, I believe his last name is. And they talk about this. They talk about the need to do more to really change lives for the people on the ground. Now, we as a community, and I want to be very clear, Rochester is unique because our folks here in our philanthropic community, they invest a lot, and we appreciate all that they do. Our United Way raises more money than Buffalo and Syracuse combined. And so we really put a lot into programs. This, to me, into not-for-profit and delivering those programs and resources, this to me is a little bit different. This is actually investing in the people and in the neighborhoods that were truly affected in a different way, and it's a unique opportunity to do that with some of these resources.
So when you say that you see a role for it in your organization and other government organizations, why do you say money in the implementation phase?
So that's part of what the exploratory committee would be looking at. In the planning phase, if we were going to do this, how would you provide the resources? Who would get it? Our not-for-profit, especially our not-for-profit organizations that are located in the neighborhoods, right? So Ibero, Baden Street, Urban League, the YWCA, those types of organizations, they have been really on the ground dealing with this population for a long time. We want to hear from them. We want to develop a program that can be, or an initiative that's realistic, but that is also successful. And we have a unique opportunity to do this now. and this is the reason why we want to explore it. We don't want the money to start coming in and then we're trying to figure out, okay, how do we make this investment? No, now is the time to put the committee together to see how some of these dollars will be utilized, and then to hit the ground running in implementation. And we need to hear from the people that have been providing those services to the community for so many years. Action for a Better Community, I can go on and name them, but we have a lot of not-for-profits that have been out here doing the work, and we want to hear their voices in this discussion as well, and that's why we're inviting them to the table.
We don't know how much money would come from marijuana legalization. We're assuming that it's a lot, or at least a couple million.
Right.
Why
should we wait? Why should we wait to develop a plan to a community that has been disinvested in and affected? Now, we continue to do other work. So I can talk about our financial empowerment centers. I can talk about our fast track program. I can talk about our work with YAMTEP and REJOB and all of the other things that we're doing in our community right now. And this is just one tool that's in the toolbox. And what I'm saying is that now is the time. We know that this legislation, I've been told after talking to the majority leader, that this legislation is going to pass. So why wait to find out? Rather, we should be making these investments this particular way when the rest of the country is moving forward with these ideas and being innovative and forward thinking. What I do know for a fact is Black and brown people in this community have suffered for way too long, and this is an opportunity for us to change lives generationally for them and to put in place the steps to make it happen. And so we will continue to do financial literacy through our financial empowerment centers. We will continue to do the other programs. But if you're talking about a new revenue source, the place that deserves to have that investment is the place that was mostly affected by the actual drug sales.
You've already proposed the Housing First Trust Fund, an emergency grants program using revenue from marijuana. Now you're talking about the basic income. Do you know how much a city should expect and whether there will be enough?
So when you talk about the Housing Trust Fund, it's not just something that the city will do. That program is moving forward with many community partners right now. A study is taking place. I believe we passed legislation last month on, if it wasn't last month, it was the month before last, on the Housing Trust Fund program. When we talk about the investment or the emergency fund, that emergency fund, the thinking was looking at UBI and looking at possible home ownership. And when you think about Housing First, that home ownership component is a part of that. And so this is specifically looking at, if we were to do this particular type of program here in Rochester, how would it be done? Who would be able to take advantage of it? You know, the resources that will be needed to make it sustainable. And so it's really doing the planning stage, or the first step in trying to either bring it to our community and look at it, since we know we now have or will have this source of revenue.
And then the communities that you referenced up here in the press release, Oakland, Stockton, Evanston, their programs are all targeted specifically at Black people and people of color. Is that what you're envisioning for?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Other programs were targeted to keep them out.
Yep.
Why can't we do something to target to keep them in and to uplift them? Yes.
Mayor, it is an election year. There are maybe some people who think this is just a way to maybe intentional things. What would you say to that?
This is something that we have been working on equity for the last 3 years. 3 years ago, I stood right here in this place and signed the Racial Equity and Leadership Charter. And as a city, we have been working towards that. We've done a lot as it pertains to real racial equity and leadership. You can go to the city website and look at all the things that we have done about this particular issue when we talk about equity across the board, is something that I have been talking about since I have been mayor. This marijuana legalization passage, or the hope that it passes, gives us a unique opportunity right now. And so you don't want to put forth something if you don't know if it's coming to fruition. My understanding is that there is a deal. It's coming to fruition. You want to be prepared for that. And I want to make it known that, to me, the people that deserve the dollars the most and deserve the investment the most are the communities that were most affected by drug sales and illegal marijuana sales, and those families that were affected by it. And so when we can go back and we can look at neighborhoods, we can look at the data, and we can say that on many of these corridors in these challenged neighborhoods in 1970, they were full with different types of businesses, full with different types of activity. And you look at it today, there was a disinvestment. You look at the housing, there was a disinvestment. And even though we've done a lot, especially in Northeast Rochester, right now, today, we have over $100 million being invested in that community alone. Today, we need to do more. And we need to change the outcomes for the people on the ground. This is an opportunity for us to do that. And this is not something I'm just talking about today. This is something that I've been talking about since the day I walked into office in 2007.
Is this going to take a lot of other people stepping up? I mean, I'm not sure if you have an idea of what the figure is that's going to come from marijuana, but,
Absolutely. And that's exactly why you do an exploratory committee to really look at that. A lot of people will have to step up, but this is not something that is new or hasn't been talked about. The Rochester Monroe Anti-Poverty Initiative, many other organizations around the community, I believe Ibero and Urban League also have been talking about some of this. So this isn't something that's new, as in theory. This is an opportunity because now we have different resources that are going to be coming to our community and putting those resources to use where they're most needed. And for me, my thought process is that, and I hope that others join in that, is it needs to go to the communities that have been most impacted by it. I'm sorry? So none of that is outlined. That's why we're doing the exploratory committee. What we announced, this is not that reparations or this program is here. We have in Chief of Staff Brittany Wells as well as Dr. Archie lead a committee around exploring these options. Rather, it would be good for Rochester or something different, but utilizing these particular funds as the basis for how to get it done, along with whatever resources can come from the community. And so next week they will be putting out that we've already sent the letter. They will get who will be attending from all of these different groups and having that meeting to discuss and develop that timeline. But as it pertains to when the legislation will pass, I believe that the legislature wants it to pass in this budget cycle. So it would be around April 1st or somewhere around that. There's a lot of research that's already available. So I think that there's a lot of data from ACT Rochester and other places that's already available. So it's just a matter of really figuring out how to do it, and rather you want a targeted program, this particular neighborhood, a targeted income, maximum number of people. So how these programs were implemented in Stockton as well as in Oakland, they have a maximum number of people, and it's a pilot program to see how does it work, and then to go forward with full implementation.
If you were to have your way, would you, what income requirement would make sense for you?
We would need to know what the basic the universal basic income for our community would be, right? So what that number is. And that is, that's, you have to have the data people look at, okay, how much monthly would a family of 4 in Rochester, New York need to basically pay all their bills and not be stressed? And that in every city is different. And that's why you want to look at the data. You want to make sure that you're doing something to help and not something that's going to harm the community. Thank you.
I was wondering if you could explain what made you decide to spend the current, like with the
So he had already been suspended for 30 days, and so he had already been reprimanded for his advice. And even in the report, it wasn't malice. It wasn't trying to deceive anybody. It's what he generally thought as an attorney, and he's already been reprimanded for that. Thank you. So what he said was that he would allow the family to release it. And so I think that that's someone's opinion, but as we move forward and as you have seen from the work that we've done, we're getting these videos out as soon as we have them redacted for people to see, and we will continue to do that, because for me, transparency has always been the best policy. It's the reason why I brought body-worn cameras to our city, because I believe that the public should be able to see them. The public should know right away, and when we're able to release this information, and we'll continue to do that.
RPD announced a plan yesterday to fight violence. How do you feel, as a lawyer in particular, about the idea of asking judges to increase sentences as they announced?
So I don't think that they announced that they want judges to increase sentences. That what they want is that people that are violent offenders to be able to be held accountable for